Hello, Kat here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing my July wrap-up. So in July I read 15 books and including 3 bonbons. So bonbons are usually books that I don't really do a summary of and I don't really get into. I read them more as like palate cleansers between other books. However, the 3 bonbons I read this month were all in a set by the same author, Sebastian, and this was my first set of Regency romances that featured 2 men. So I just wanted to give a shout out to it, being the first of its kind that I have ever read. So the names of them are The Ruin of a Rake, The Soldier's Scoundrel, and The Lawrence Brown Affair. So if that seems like something you'd be into, I really enjoyed them. They are, of course, like guilty pleasure reading. They're really quick, they're really easy, and I had so much fun reading them. Let's just get into the 12 books that I read, and I will start from the lowest scored up to the highest. So the first on this list is What Belongs to You by Garth Greenwell. So I give this book 2.5 stars overall. It follows an American teacher who's teaching in Bulgaria. So the book opens with the teacher going to a public bathroom and paying for sex with a male prostitute named Miko. And Miko is one of the most engaging characters I've read in a very long time. Probably out of like all the books I have read this month, Miko, for some reason, just got really ingrained into my mind. As the novel progresses, their entanglement becomes something more than just a sexual transaction, and it's dangerous and it's evocative. It's also very possessive and like almost it feels like they're strangling each other and pushing each other away at the same time. The reason this book gets 2.5 stars is largely due to the other points of the novel, which include history about Bulgaria and what it was like for the character to grow up in 1990s America as a gay man, and also the writing style of the book. So the book is largely told in stream of consciousness, and there is absolutely no indentation, and this drove me pretty insane. It was really hard to read, actually, not gonna lie. So I mostly powered through this because Mitko was in the beginning, no Mitko in the middle, and then I was hoping that Mitko would come back in the end, so that is actually why I continued on. So the 2.5 stars are for Mitko. I loved him as a character and I loved their interactions together. I just wasn't so keen on the writing style and the formatting and some of the other elements of the book. So moving on into 3-star books. So I know that this book is largely loved by everyone, and of course 3 stars isn't bad, but it is The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. It is a contemporary YA that follows Molly. She is 17 years old and she's very unlucky in love. She's had 26 unrequited crushes, and she currently has a crush, and then she's also working with another guy that she might be crushing on. But basically the reason that I didn't really get on so well with this story is that it is just your typical kind of YA love story. So the points of this novel that set it apart from others, I think, is the queer inclusion. There's a lot of it in here, and racial inclusion, and it just was really good to see. However, the actual plot of the novel I thought was very I guess a little cookie cutter. So after reading Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda, I was blown away by Simon as a character and also the plot of the novel. I thought it was so adorable, and Simon was so funny and like really quick-witted and just like really fast paced dialogue back and forth with him and then other characters. And I did not feel this way with this book. So Molly, I actually hated being in her mind, because a lot of the times I understand she has low self-esteem and she doesn't really fit in, but when the character's constantly responding with like, or like long pauses, that's not exactly the character that I would like to be in the mind of. So I will definitely read more by Becky Albertalli in the future. This just wasn't it for me. So between the two, I would recommend Simon. Another book that falls into the 3-star category I just read, and it is Everyone Hanging Out Without Me and Other Concerns by Mindy Kaling. So Mindy Kaling, of course, is very famous for being an actress and a writer, producer on The Office, and of course The Mindy Project. She is hilarious and I love her in TV, and I wish that I had loved this book as much as I love her in the skits that she does. So This book is basically written, I guess, like, she calls them essays, but they're basically like diary entries, and she basically rants about different topics, and I chuckled, but I didn't down and out laugh. I wasn't like lolling, as they say. So I really wish I enjoyed this more. I was really looking forward to it, but it was like a pleasant read. So I guess it would be really good for like just if you don't want to think too hard and you just want to be like pleasantly amused, then this is probably your 3-star book. Let's get into the 3.5 stars. So the next one is Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. So I found this book very interesting both in style and content. The plot is as follows. A family loses its mother, and so it follows a father and 2 boys as they deal with the grief of losing their mother and their lover. One day, a huge black crow comes and decides to basically join their family and stay, and Crow says that he will stay until they don't need him anymore. I thought that the premise was absolutely so interesting. Parts of this book were just so brilliant and so heartbreaking and raw. Other parts I don't think I understood, to be quite frank. I remember reading them and just kind of being like, I don't know, I don't get it. So I give it 3.5 stars overall because I feel like this book would be really amazing if I was perhaps going through a hard time. This book manages to be both listening to an angry song and listening to a soothing lullaby at the same time. So I just found this book really intriguing, and I give it 3.5 stars overall, and I would recommend it. I think if it sounds like something that you would be into, but do be forewarned, there is quite a lot of, I say, discombobulating parts. Yeah, so take from that what you will. And also in the 3.5 stars is Chobits Volume 2. This follows a humanoid robot named Chi as she is found in an alleyway dumpster. She's basically adopted by your average Joe named Hideki, and then she's trying to fit into society and learn how to be a human. What is a human? Am I human? Are parts of me human? Is a soul only for humans? I really love the idea of the story, and I love the story embedded in the story, which is called, I believe, A City with No People, and it's used as a way to teach Chi what it is like to be human. So like, for instance, this is a good page. Yeah. So she reads the book, and then like this little rabbit wanders around and is asking, what is humanity? Do I have a soul? Who am I? Will anyone love me for me, even if I'm not human? But, and this is why I don't like rereading books, upon the second reading, some things are like glaringly, evidently wrong. So I guess at the time I didn't realize in the end she goes to a certain place that is like totally inappropriate. Also, some of the drawings are just, I think, titillation or fan service. I do love the illustration style, but I don't need to see her panties like every 5 seconds. That's not really, you know, key to the plot. So overall, 3.5 stars. If you've ever read this, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. It's beautiful, the story's great, but there are definitely problems. This is a problematic fave, like, for sure. Oh well, what you gonna do? Okay, so now we're moving into the 4-star range. So number 1 in the 4-star range is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. And this book was on like a bunch of lists for if you're a Slytherin, you will like ... And so I picked it up. I was so intrigued. If you don't know, it follows Victor and Eli, and they are college roommates. And they have to do a thesis having to do with science or experimentation. And they realize that if you subject people to near-death experiences, you can gain extraordinary powers. So they start experimenting, and then fast forward 10 years, Victor has just broken out of prison and he's seeking Eli, and they are no longer friends, they are their worst enemies. It sounds so intriguing, and the writing is really easy to get into. I had no problem getting into it, and the action is just really fast-paced, and similar to A Darker Shade of Magic, I had no problem getting into the story. I really liked the plot. I had some problems connecting with the characters for some reason. So that's why it gets 4 stars. It's not that I didn't love the idea of this and that I didn't love like some of the characters and their actions and their thoughts. It was awesome. This is a book with like 2 maybe heroes or 2 maybe villains. Maybe everyone is heroes, maybe everyone's villains. It's awesome. I just wish that I connected more fully with one of the 2, but I overall think that V.E. Schwab is like an amazing writer, and I will probably read the next in this series whenever they come out. I hope they come out pretty close to now. I hate waiting. Okay, so the next 4-star is Revenge by Yoko Ogawa. This is a collection of dark short stories. I believe there are 11. And I'm a huge fan of Yoko Ogawa. Most of what she writes is very dark, very sinister, and very creepy. And that's definitely true of these stories. Some of these stories are so creepy that I just had to, like, you know, put the book down like a little bit because I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm just gonna let that sit and like kind of forget a little bit that I just read that, and then I'll come back to it. But for instance, my favorite one in this, I believe it's Sewing for a Heart, is when a bag maker is commissioned by a woman to create a bag to fit around the heart that is beating outside of her body. So the way that Yoko Ogawa sets the stories up is so intriguing, and there's just something about her writing style. It's very dark and it seeps in slowly. It's like being lulled into a story that's largely written in a succinct, very simple style like Hemingway, and then you just get pulled in, and then you realize once you're in that something is horribly wrong. So many of these, like the end of each short story, I'm just like, oh, perfect. Yoko Ogawa, you are great. So I highly recommend this, and my other favorites by her are the short story The Diving Pool and the book Hotel Iris, all of which are creepy AF. So yeah, if that's your thing, get into it. Okay, so the last 4-star book is another collection of short stories, and this is by Bradbury called The Illustrated Man. So in the prologue, you're introduced to a man who is the illustrated man, and he has moving tattoos on his body, and at night they come alive and they tell their story. So as you move through, you're watching the story from the man's skin. This was just pure Bradbury, and I'm a huge fan, like diehard Bradbury fan. So, so many things in here were amazing. I'll just share like my favorite story, and it had to do with a bunch of astronauts. Their rocket is torn apart. They are communicating via their helmet links, and as they are sailing off into the different like realms of space, it's like what you would say to the last people that you can speak to when you know you're going to die. The world around you is beautiful, but it's also going to kill you. And I mean, it was just amazing. Like, one is soaring toward the sun, one is hurtling toward Earth, one is going to a meteor shower, one is going to the asteroid belt, one is going off like into the dark. And it was just insanely beautiful, and I really can't get over it. And overall, this is a really, really solid short story collection. So if you love Bradbury, I would really recommend it. And also, this cover is just beautiful. Okay, so now we're gonna move into the 4.5 stars. Dun, dun, dun. So, of course, Carry On by Rowell. I've been wanting to read this book for so long, and I think every time I have talked about books I want to read, or like a haul, or like when I was talking about Fangirl, people were like, you should read Carry On, and I'm like, I'm going to, and they're like, no, you should do it now. So I did. And yes, it was just as perfect as I thought it was going to be. I got all the feels that I wanted to feel, and of course I am a slave for the Simon and Baz ship, like, of course. So if you don't know, this is basically a Harry Potter retelling where there's a chosen one and there's a magic school, and the chosen one is named Simon, and his roommate is called Baz, and he may or may not be a huge asshole, as well as he may or may not be a vampire. So things go from there, and it's just, you know, magic goodness, and there's best friends, and there's fights, and there's like self-realization, and there's gay romance, and yeah. Oh man, it was so good. So my other 4.5 stars is History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. And this is my first Adam Silvera book, and I just want to say, wow, amazing, good job. You crushed me utterly, thank you very much, and I look forward to reading more from you. So this follows Griffin, whose ex-boyfriend and best friend has just drowned. And it is about dealing with grief and coming to terms with how you live on when someone that you loved so much is gone forever. And one of the greatest strengths of this book, and I think why I connected with it so strongly, is that Adam Silvera totally wrote Griffin as I think Griffin would really act if this happened. So what do I mean by that? I mean, he didn't shy away from making Griffin sometimes a complete asshole, sometimes really selfish, sometimes totally fucked up, and sometimes making all the wrong decisions. Like, when something like this would happen, that is what actually would happen. So as I'm reading along, he's making terrible choices, and I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. But he does do that anyway because he's grieving, and he can't see straight, and he's torn up, and he's emotionally unavailable, and all of these different things. And somehow, amidst all of that crushing melancholy, Adam Silvera also put in here scenes of like such happiness that like there were some chapters where I was like laughing and I was like, oh, that's so cute. Oh, they're so cute together. And then other scenes where I was just like, why would he do this to me? So yeah, this book is great, and I am really looking forward to his next book, which is called, what is it? They Both Die at the End. And it is out later this year, and I mean, like, I'm just already expecting to be equally crushed and devastated because they all die at the end. I just know that's gonna crush me. But I'm looking forward to it because Silvera is an amazing writer. So yeah, highly recommend. Okay, so the last 4.5-star book that I read this month is Evenfall Volume 2 by Santino, Hassell, and Ace. I'm gonna put the picture here. So as a lot of people know, I love Evenfall Volume 1 to bits. The main couple reminds me very much of the couple from Foxhole Court, and basically, I'm not going to get into the Volume 2 story, I'm just going to tell you about the Volume 1 story because I don't want to spoil anything. But basically, there is a secret government faction called the Agency. Their deadliest weapon is a man called Sin, or Hussein La Vega, and he is a highly trained assassin. He can be sent in when other people can't, but the main problem is that he is really hard to control and he's totally unpredictable. So all of his past partners have either quit, fled, or have been killed under mysterious circumstances. So they eventually pair him with a man named Boyd. Boyd has some problems. He is very antisocial. He doesn't really understand the emotional aspect of life. It's just amazing. I love the way that Boyd and Sin like interact and the way that the relationship is developed, and I just love it to pieces. I highly recommend it. I give it 4.5 stars. Okay, so getting on to the last book this month, which is 5 Glorious Stars. If I had 10 stars, I would give this book 10 stars, 11 stars, all of the stars. So it is Teeth by Hannah Moskowitz. I can't get over this book. I've been raving about it since I read it. It's on like every list that I've made. And basically, it follows a boy named Rudy. His family moves to an island because his younger brother is very, very sick. And there is a rumor that the fish that swim around the island, when eaten, have the ability to like basically stave off death and improve health, even if the person is very, very, very sick. So his family moved there, and they moved to like a decrepit old house on a cliff overlooking the sea, and the sea is just like crashing, and it's like a really, you know, terrifying setup for Rudy, and he's lonely, and the sea's crashing, and at night he's hearing screaming, and so, you know, it's pretty foreboding. And so he's walking along the beach, and he meets someone named Teeth, who may or may not be a boy, who may or may not be a merman, who may or may not have to do with the miracle of the fish. So, this book is amazing. It ripped my heart out. I would say Adam Silvera, like, ripped my heart out, but, like, left a little of it in my chest. This one just, like, eviscerated me, and I haven't cried so hard since Song of Achilles, so, yeah. So, like, this book is very gritty, very dark. I'd say it's kind of fairy tale-esque-ish, so, like, think Little Mermaid, but very dark, and with gay elements. I highly recommend it, and actually the next month I'm planning to read some more by Hannah Moskowitz, because this is my first book of hers, and I mean, when I read a new author and their first book that I've read is 5 stars, I'm just like, let me eat all you've made. So yeah, looking forward to that. So yeah, please read this book. I would love to talk about it with like anyone. So that is the end of my wrap-up. Have you read any of these books? Can I answer any questions you may have? I leave for the United States tomorrow, and I'm really looking forward to it. I am so excited to go to the United States and buy all of the books in the world, and I hope you are having just the loveliest day. Thank you so much for watching. So if you liked this video, then please give it a thumbs up or hit the subscribe button, and I will talk to you later in the comments. So yes, have a lovely day. Bye bye!